Hi, I'm Menace Joannides, Chief Medical Director at Optimum Re, and this is the Optimum Academy videos on PrEP and HIV 101, and this is video number 2, retroviruses. So let's get started. So what is a retrovirus? And this is in regard to preventing retroviral infections with HIV, with PrEP, as well as a new topic we're going to discuss now, HIV positive applicants, and talking about applicants which are HIV positive are infected with a retrovirus. So what is the HIV virus? And you can see it's a complicated virus and it's called retrovirus for a particular reason, and we're going to talk about that today. So, we use the word retro, talk about things from the past. These are some TV shows, which I guess we would consider retro, but we still watch. So, retro kind of is like looking back, or things if we look in reverse, so to speak. So, in terms of viruses, though, retroviruses are named retro because of their unique replication, or how they duplicate, their unique replication process, which reverses the flow of genetic information. Normally, DNA is transcribed into RNA. However, retroviruses reverse this process by using their secret agent. And what is that secret agent? It's reverse transcriptase enzymes in the virus to add their RNA into the host or the person or applicant's DNA. So that's why they're called retro, because of this secret agent, reverse transcriptase. Two big words there, but that's what actually occurs and why this is such a difficult virus to treat. So what is reverse transcriptase, which is a complicated and confusing term, right? So if you're going to transcribe something, or you're doing transcription in common life settings, we would transcribe from audio, an audio recording, something along those lines, transcribe it into a written or digital report or a letter. So that's what transcription is, audio to typewritten or digital that you've created. Reverse transcription would be going back the other way, so going from typewritten to audio. So we're kind of reversing the process here. So how can we go from a written word to an audio recording? So that's reverse transcription, and that's basically what this virus is doing. It's reversing the process that we normally follow, or the viruses normally follow. So when we transcribe genetic information, this particular virus is able to reverse the process and take its RNA and incorporate it into the person's DNA. And that causes problems and makes the virus very difficult to treat, and why we never actually rid the body of the virus. Once it's present, we can control it, but it's hidden, it's still there because of this ability of its reverse transcription. So medications that are used to treat HIV have to work in some way on this reverse transcription process. So since the HIV virus has reverse transcription enzymes that allow it to enter the CD4 white cells and combine with the cell's genetic material, it makes the HIV virus very difficult to treat because the HIV genome can become integrated into the patient's genome and produce viral particles at any time. So this is one of the reasons that we use CD4 counts to tell us how the applicant is doing. If they're HIV positive and taking medications, it's because the virus enters these CD4 cells and attacks them. So medications are used to try to prevent the virus from using its reverse transcriptase to get into the CD4 cells. Some anti-HIV drugs, like AZT and non-nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitors, target reverse transcriptase to prevent HIV from replicating. But those are drugs that were used in the past, and we have newer drugs currently, which we'll be talking about in terms of how do we treat HIV virus. So, because it's such a difficult virus to treat, because it has this reverse transcriptase, you have to attack it with all kinds of weapons, conventional and otherwise, in order to make a dent in the ability of the virus to replicate or reproduce. So it's as if you were at war with the virus and you had to use all forms of the armed services in order to attack and try to prevent the virus from replicating. So you would use airplanes with bombs, battleships, cyber attacks, tanks, ground forces, submarines with sending explosives to try to blow the virus up, as well as drones, anything possible in order to try to attack the virus and prevent it from using its reverse transcriptase to replicate. And that's why what we look for in applicants who are HIV positive is we look to see if the virus load is basically undetectable, because these medicines are attacking the virus and preventing it from replicating. And then we also, as I said, look at the CD4 count to see if that is satisfactory and allows us to consider the person for life insurance. So there's an awful lot of drugs and different classes that are used to treat HIV positive patients. And these are the classes of antiretroviral therapy, abbreviated ART. And I've listed them here. It's a very long and complex list, but just so you have an idea of how many types of drugs or classes of drugs are used to try to treat this very difficult to treat virus. So there's drugs called nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitors, because we're trying to inhibit that reverse transcriptase. So we're trying to block an enzyme called reverse transcriptase. So it's kind of like in Berlin at checkpoint Charlie, you try to block the entry or use of that enzyme. There's non-nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitors, which bind and change reverse transcriptase's shape. So it's kind of like changing the shape of that green ball. There's protease inhibitors, which block an enzyme called protease. There's integrase strand transfer inhibitors, which block an enzyme called integrase, which inserts viral DNA into the host or patient's genome or genes. There's fusion inhibitors that bind to proteins on the virus to prevent it from entering CD4 cells. And there's CCR5 antagonists to bind that protein, which is necessary for the HIV entry. So all these different pathways, or these are our armed services attacking the virus from different directions in order to try to prevent it from replicating. And then there's booster drugs like ritonavir, which boosts the level of other drugs. Kind of like Jim Carrey here drinking a Red Bull. He's getting a boost in energy in the movie Yes Man. But ritonavir is used in other drugs as well to boost the level of the drug. And you may have heard of Paxlovid, which is used for COVID infection. Paxlovid has ritonavir, which boosts the level of the other drug to treat COVID virus. So you may wonder, who led the battle against the AIDS epidemic in the 1980s? Well, it was none other than Dr. Fauci, who was the leader at the NIH that took care of or tried to handle the AIDS crisis back when medications were not available. So a name from the past, and he would actually meet with groups of AIDS patients because they were upset that the government was not quickly handling their problem and finding new drugs to treat this dangerous disease. And many HIV positive patients were dying because there was no medication available. Magic Johnson applied for life insurance in 1991. It was found to be positive. It kind of brought attention to the whole HIV era. Luckily, he has survived because medications became available, and he made it through the critical years of the early 1990s when medications were not completely effective. But 1995 was a critical year because sequinavir, an HIV protease inhibitor, was the first drug of its kind to be approved by the FDA for use outside of clinical trials. And that drug kind of finally tipped the scale and started the process of finding drugs that were very efficient at helping to block the replication of the HIV virus in HIV positive applicants. So that drug started the process of helping people with HIV positive infections and was the turning point, as I said. And it's a protease inhibitor, so it's in the class of antiviral drugs used to treat HIV that have a number of effects, including stopping HIV reproduction, lowering the viral load, and slowing the HIV progression. Now, newer drugs have been developed, but this was a key turning point in the HIV positive drug manufacturing process. And so, as I said, really, we're still trying to find the perfect drugs to treat HIV. So we're still, throwing everything we have at HIV to try to improve the outcome of HIV patients and hopefully someday find a cure. So it's not just a chronic disease that requires daily treatment, but we can actually cure the viral disease. That completes video number 2 on PrEP and HIV. Stay tuned for video number 3 as we continue our story of PrEP and HIV in the Optimum Academy.